some of this crowd. Woo! Yeah! Woo! All right. Yeah! Woo! All right. Woo! All right. Thank you. Today I want to talk to you guys about the success and achievement blueprint. And it'll be queued up here in just a second. But let me ask you a question. Have you ever, let's say you're reading a book, or let's say listening to a set of CDs on goal setting. Have you ever noticed how you forget whatever material that you're currently focused on because maybe, you read something 6 months ago on attitude and maybe 6 months ago before that? Have you ever noticed that personal improvement seems to be a constant, never-ending journey where you never quite get where you're trying to go, right? Now, we all want to grow, and we all know that learning never stops. But we all need a map, right? A step-by-step map that literally lays out something that we can reference and re-reference when we get off track. And one thing we'll talk about today is state when we get to it. And even when things aren't working out, and your chart is not where it needs to be, you need to be able to control your state. And that's one thing we'll talk about. All right, so I want you guys to visualize what you'll see in a second, which is a series of boxes. And on the top, there's going to be two boxes that show up in just a moment. One is no ego, and one is open to learning. We all know the value of an education, right? Right, guys? Okay. We know we have to go to high school, and college is a pretty good idea, right? And we were all told to go to school because we want to succeed and achieve. But have you noticed how when you actually have someone that's succeeded, a multimillionaire that's going to show you step by step how to do it, have you ever noticed how sometimes, I know not this audience, but people react and are a little bit closed-minded to learning how to succeed and achieve? Does everyone notice that? Right? Why is that? I mean, virtually everybody knows the value of an education, but all of a sudden we get closed-minded when it's the very topic on success and achievement? Doesn't make any sense. And I know this audience doesn't fall into that category, but one thing I want you guys to start thinking about when you're influencing other human beings, and we'll get to the power sales part in a moment, I want you to think about that as a new tool, a new distinction for maybe to get them to open up their mind, because that's what's going on. And if you can identify and they start to question their beliefs of why they're closed-minded on something that's going to help them succeed, maybe that'll be another tool to help you influence them. Okay, now it's a little bit of a fine print, so I'll make sure I read each one of these, but open to learning, no ego. I'm going to move on. I know that this audience knows you have to be open to learning and have no ego, right? Okay. Next box, guys, personal responsibility. If we didn't have those top two boxes, this is the granddaddy. This is like the foundation of your tall building you're trying to build. If you don't have it, it falls down. Look, have you guys noticed that society is really split down the middle, right? You have your pull yourself up by your own bootstraps people, and then you've got everyone else that blames their parents, that blames their circumstance, that blames society, and blames everybody, right? Now, I know this crowd has nothing to do with that crowd. You guys are personal responsibility guys, right? Okay, but here's what I want to introduce you to, is to start thinking about the different levels of personal responsibility. So stay with me. I want you to start to think about, as we go through these, a scale of 1 to 10, and where you rate yourself on that scale. Now, we're all told extremes and things aren't good. Well, when it comes to these, I disagree. I think that we should become extreme on personal responsibility. Can you see any negative to being 100% responsible? No, right? So I want you to start thinking about the levels of personal responsibility. Imagine this. Let's say you had a conversation of, let's say, 3 people, and you're in business with these people, and there's something that went wrong a little bit, and you're all starting to blame each other, right? All of a sudden, imagine saying to that person, you know what? Let me stop you guys right here. This is my fault. I'm going to take responsibility. I'm going to fix it. The minute you say that, it's like you could hear a pin drop. People aren't used to that, are they? When you start taking responsibility at that other level, now what happens, you start gaining power, quality power, to help people, to influence them. you start gaining more power with yourself. The ability to take personal responsibility. So really what I wanted you guys to focus on as we go through this is the different levels of where you feel that you're at on that scale. So start to ask yourself right now, and if you have notes, rate yourself real quick on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the highest. Next one, passion and drive. We all know we need passion and drive, right guys? You gotta have passion and drive. This audience probably has that. You're probably already born with that. But here again, I want you to stay with me to start thinking about the different levels of passion and drive. Specifically, here we go. We're going to branch out to the right. Energy, beautiful, thank you. Energy and proper eating. Now, don't worry. I'm not going to go on a whole sermon about eating. You guys all know this stuff. The information's out there. You've probably bought the tapes, bought the CDs. You know you need to eat small portions, lean proteins, all that stuff. You know that. But what I want you guys to think about is this. Think about passion and drive for a second. It's what? It's energy. It's energy. And when we talk about Power Sales University, besides all the tactics and the techniques, which we'll go through in Power Sales University, and I don't want to take anything away from that, but the power base behind salesmanship is a transfer of enthusiasm, right? You guys have heard that before, I'm sure. But what is a transfer of enthusiasm? It's transferring energy, right? Okay. So let's use me as an example. If I didn't bring it today and I had a giant pizza last night and 5 drinks, and even though I'm a passionate person naturally, where's my passion going to be at? What level is it going to be at? So, right, low. Thank you. So what I want you to think about, and stay with me now as we start to link these boxes together, back to personal responsibility, isn't it my responsibility to bring it when I come here to serve you guys? Okay, so think about it this way, and this is, again, I get real extreme on this stuff, but isn't it your responsibility then to increase your levels of passion to make yourself more money and also to serve your people, your community, and ultimately your family, your spouse, right? Okay, so I just want to introduce one new idea behind why you should eat right, why you should exercise, which is the other box on the other side. And I just want you to think about, besides all the stuff you know, like maybe it makes you live longer. Yeah, okay, that's a good idea. But besides all that stuff and feeling better, it's going to make you more money because you're going to have more energy, right? So just one more reason to do it. And I believe, this is my belief, it's our personal responsibility to bring it, and we can bring it through exercise, through eating right, which ultimately feeds our passion. Next box, belief and expectations. Now, this audience is sophisticated. I don't need to tell you that we don't get in life what we want. We get in life what we expect, right? This audience understands the power of manifestation, right? Okay, so let's move on. What I want to do is educate you and share with you what I believe influences your beliefs and expectations. Certainty. What in the world is that? Okay, so we all know we need to be confident, right? We were told since we were kids, you need to be confident. Listen to how I try to say the word confidence with as much power as I can. You need to be confident. I give that like a 5. But listen to this. Listen how even the word sounds on your tongue. No, you need to be certain. There's confidence, and then there's certainty. Certainty trumps confidence. Now, you're going to learn about certainty in Power Sales University. We're going to get really into it. I just want to give you a taste of how certainty can influence other human beings to take action to help you serve them, and how you can serve yourself. Because when you're ultimately in your mind or in your private space telling yourself you can do it, check this out. You know what? I can do it. Okay, that's nice. But guys, did you know that 93% of human communication has nothing to do with the words we say? 93%. My goal with Power Sales, or I should say one of my goals, is to get you to see things through a different lens, where you start to realize, wow, that's crazy. 7% are just the words. That's it. That's it. And if you've had any type of powerful sales training, most likely it's just been trained on the words. What about the body language? What about the voice qualities? But we'll get into that in a minute with power sales, but what I want to talk to you guys about is how it affects yourself. Because the techniques used to influence other people are also used to influence yourself. So, 55% is body language, 38% is voice quality. So in your privacy, where's your certainty when you say, I can do it? How does this sound? I can do it, right? More certainty. What happens is when you do that, you start to condition your body to produce a better result. You're more certain. So I just want you guys to start being cognizant, start being aware of where your body language is at. Even in the privacy of your own home, and also where your voice qualities are at, right? So you can bring it. All right. Woo! Perfect transition, audience. Thank you. Your state, short for mental state. I believe, and I'm not the first person to say this, but I believe that your mental state is the most important thing that's going to affect your ability to succeed or not. Why? It gets back to what we talked about. You don't get in life what you want. You get in life what you expect. Someone asked me on the way over here, what's the biggest audience you ever spoke in front of? I said 1,000 people. And they kind of looked at me. They kind of looked at me like, oh, you're in for it. No way. I get in life what I expect. And I've expected to be here since I was a young man. I knew I had these tools. Right? So we get in life not what we want, what we expect, but ultimately that's a nice way of saying we get where our state is at the moment. So guys, there are tools how to manage your state. Now, my gift is Power Sales University, but if you're interested in contact life leadership, I'll give you guys, some of the 5 top books, tapes ever on how to manage your state. I've been to seminars where literally you walk across 2,300 degree hot coals. And there's no trick to it. I had the guy that came up with a wheelbarrow, and he had the fire going right there, and he told me to step back a little bit, and he put nice fresh ones down. Have you all heard of how a mother can pull a trapped child underneath the car and lift up that car for a couple inches? Right? Would you like to learn how to use that skill set and how to develop that? Okay, maybe we can't lift up a car a couple inches, but we can get in the right state to make the phone calls, to influence who we need to influence, to persuade who we need to persuade. So state management is key. Next box, influence yourself and others. Okay, that's what Power Sales University is all about as far as the influencing others part. And one thing I wanted to share with you really quick is that we have to be careful that there's been a lot of sales trainers that have gotten in our heads over the years and said, hey, it's just about educating people. It's not true. We have to close, but close is not a dirty word as long as here's a nice phrase for you, influencing with integrity. Influencing with integrity. It's okay. If someone asks me, are you trying to close me? Absolutely. And that's a good thing. Let me tell you why. Right? Influencing with integrity is a good thing because, let me ask you guys a question. Did you guys know that all studies agree that people do not buy things? People are sold things. So once you start to understand that and you go, wait a second, that's true. I love what you guys do. I love it. I mean, give you guys a round of applause, guys. Come on. I love what you guys do. You guys are helping other human beings succeed, get into a better financial position. So if you really believe in what you do, and you now understand that people do not buy things, aren't you literally hurting them if you don't close them? Right? So it's going to take some time to sink in, but when you go through Power Sales, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of that, but I wanted to talk to you about this. Okay. There's 3 things that influence me to become very extremely proficient at sales, and I want to share these because they're on our same line here with beliefs and expectations. There were 3 things that influenced me. Number 1, I had been in sales for about a year, and it was time to go to college, okay? But guess what? I decided not to go to college because I was in the highest paid profession on earth like you guys are, sales, right? I mean, I was an honor student. I freaked out my mom. But you know what? Think about it. If you're in the highest paid profession on earth, why not get a degree in that? Why not get a degree in that, right? 90% of all sales never even read one sales book in their life. Why is that? If you go up to the top box, ego, I've even had people over the years say, well, I've never had to read a sales book. Why would you be proud of that? It's crazy. So the other thing that influenced me is this. I heard one time that when you've truly mastered something, you can teach it. Think about that. Let that process. If you've truly mastered something, you can teach it. So table that for a second. Here's my third thing. This is my favorite quote. I may go over the top with this, but this quote, for me, changed my entire life. I think about this quote no less than once a week. Now, unless you like being mediocre, I think it'll have the same effect on you. And nobody likes being mediocre, right? Here's the quote, guys. Without committing to excellence, you're accepting mediocrity. Think about that. Even if you don't believe it, we get in life not what we want, what we expect. If you expect that to be true, it is. So for me, I know it's a little extreme, but I like it. Right? Without committing to excellence, you're accepting mediocrity. So all I did, guys, and I encourage you guys to do the same, is I simply said to myself, okay, if mastery is the ability to teach something, to truly master something, I'm going to plug that into excellence now. And I was already number 2 at the time out of 1,000 salespeople, but I couldn't teach it. You're not supposed to compare yourself to others, right? But to yourself, right? So I said to myself, you know what? That's true. I can't teach it. Personal responsibility, right? Let's ratchet it up, right? I'm like, let me take responsibility and commit to excellence and master the art and science of sales to the point where I could teach it, even though I had no intentions of becoming a sales trainer. The truth is, guys, any of you in this audience could become sales trainers. Not that you want to go do that, but my point is, if you master your very profession that you're in of the art and science of sales, does your income go up or down, guys? Up. So when you go through Power Sales University, and let me tell you, they gave you guys a gift. I charge $495 per person, okay? And they work something out for you guys, which is nothing near that. So you guys have a real gift from your owners, okay? They want to help you educate. The ability to persuade other people, guys, is a learned skill. My profession is filled with a bunch of narcissists, right? Oh, look at me, I'm a sales trainer. No, it's easy. You just have to study it. So when you go through that, that's the whole reason why you'll see I stretch it out without getting into the details. I want you guys to take your time. It's spaced out like school. Use the power of repetition to actually master the content. Now, let's flip this around. The ability to influence yourself as well. So the same tools that you use on other people, close yourself. You should hear the conversations I have in my head. And I don't feel like working out. You do it, you bastard, I'm closing myself all the time. Fair enough, So, strategy. Next box. We all know we need to have a good strategy, right? You guys have an excellent strategy with this company. I love what you guys do. And they didn't pay me to say that. They didn't tell me to say that. I just love it. But if you're trying to see a sunset and you're running east, ain't going to happen, right? You got to have the right strategy. This audience knows that. What I want to talk about is branch out a little bit and what affects your strategy. And we could leave this up for a little bit. We talk about creative thinking. Creative thinking. My mother is an amazing artist from Florida. She's went to fine art school. That's all she's done. You try to throw math at her, her eyes glaze over. Me, I can't even draw a stick figure. But if all of a sudden you told me there was multi-millionaires overnight from artists, whew, I'm going to hone my skills. I'm going to take personal responsibility. I'm going to become an amazing artist. So what I want you to think about is, it's kind of like in school, right? They say you've got 2 types of people. Hey, are you a math science person or are you more of a creative thinker? Well, I'm more that math science type, but guess what? I believe it's like a muscle, right? You have to exercise your muscle when it comes to creative thinking. Let me give you an example. They had a convention like this, much smaller, like 1,000 salespeople. Number 1 salesman that year, they sold unbreakable glass, okay? They had him up there and they said, number 1, what made you number 1? He said, what I do, you really want to know? He said, towards the end of the presentation, I put a piece of our unbreakable glass on the customer's desk, and then I hit it with a hammer. That's creative thinking, guys. They had him up the following year, and they said, what are you doing up here? You're up here again? How come you're number 1 again? What are you doing this time? He said, now I give the hammer to the customer to hit the glass. So that's creative thinking. So just start to think about exercising that muscle. Stay with me. And what level of responsibility are you willing to accept that, you know what? Yeah, I don't just believe that I'm born one way or the other. I do believe I can exercise that creative thinking muscle. All right. Let's go the other extreme, hop over the fence to the exact opposite, which is modeling. Modeling is the exact antithesis of creative thinking. Modeling is simply duplicating what someone else has done, reverse engineering it. Think the Japanese. They didn't invent the television. You wouldn't know it. Panasonic, Sony, and I think even now they have TVs coming out of South Korea. But the point is, they didn't invent the television, but they're excellent modelers. We need to become excellent at reverse engineering other successful people. Here's where these boxes start to connect. We need to take that responsibility to do that and remove our ego from the process. In this organization, I'm sure you have plenty of successful people you can model, right? All right, let's model what they do. Now, you're going to see when we get to focus, no ADD, there's a preview for you. When you, ironically, if I could just criticize our type A brethren, I'm one of them. If you take a successful person out to lunch or dinner, what makes you successful? What do they normally say? There's just 2 things you need to know. Two? Look at this chart. 2. But we'll get back to that. But pattern recognition is one thing I want you guys to start exercising on the other side. The ability to see patterns. You start to look at the successful people in your organization. You start to recognize patterns that make them successful. And you can start to duplicate those results. Because, you know, when I was a young man learning sales, that was really my primary focus, besides reading all the books and the tapes and all that. But ironically, you know, you start asking a person, okay, what are the number 1 objections in your industry? I don't know. Oh, okay, and they kind of don't know. And then you kind of have to pull it out of them. And then what are the rebuttals you say? Well, I just kind of say what, they're all over the place, right? Oftentimes. So we have to recognize patterns. Final box, linear thinking. Linear thinking, what's that? Think engineers. Think engineers. Step by step by step, right? This flow chart, guys, is just a product of linear thinking. I'm not an engineer. I don't think like an engineer, but guess what? I pulled in that piece. I really like how engineers have a step-by-step linear process of how they think. There's room for that and the ability to succeed, right? Right. Let's incorporate that. So let's go one extreme where we get the creative thinking, and let's start get the pattern recognition piece where we can start recognizing patterns and have linear thinking. And that'll tie into time management in a moment. All right, next box, attitude. Come on. What am I going to say about attitude you guys don't already know? The whole personal improvement business was born out of attitude. I just want to say one thing on attitude. My little piece is this, one sentence. I think you have to see things how they are, not worse than they are. And then I think we owe it to ourselves to see it better than it is, okay? But this audience knows you have to have a good attitude. Let's move on to focus. No ADD. All right. You may feel like I'm coming down on you here. I don't know. Who in here is a type A personality? Raise your hands. Okay? Did? Wow. Well, a lot of type A personalities are guilty of kind of being all over the place. High energy, ADD, right? And these phones, these are crushing us, right? I mean, when my wife and I have date night, I'm the one telling her to put the phone away, to be present in the conversation. We have to be careful. Focus and ADD will kill you in 2 ways, right? One is when you're selling. If we could tie back into state for a second, you have to condition yourself to get in the right state to truly focus on your customer. You have to learn how to relax, be present. I'll teach you guys tools like that. But also for yourself. Not just for your family, your children, but when you've got your own plans, when you're building your own success and achievement blueprint, your plans, you've got to focus, right? You can't be all over the place, right? Agreed? Now, that can be challenging for some of us. I understand. I was one of them. But I believe it's our personal responsibility to ourselves, our family, our community, to get better at these skill sets. And that's why I really want to stress exercising that muscle. All right, next box, massive action. Okay, once we have all these things, we've got no ego, which is awesome. We're open to learning. We're taking responsibility at a whole new level, right? Maybe now we're up to 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, where's our passion? Through the roof, because we're exercising, we're eating right. And now we have our beliefs and expectations that are on fire because we know how to get certain, and we know how to manage our state. We know how to manage our state. If I could say one more thing about state for just a moment. We can all succeed when things are going right. That's easy. Anyone can, right? How about when you get punched in the gut with some bad news? And you usually get more bad news, right? Murphy's Law, all of a sudden when it rains, it pours. I believe, again, tying these boxes in, it's our responsibility to manage our state so that we can manage ourselves through those parts when it's not going well. All right, thank you. Back to massive action. We all know we need to take massive action. What I want to talk to you about is taking the right kinds of action. The right kinds of action. I remember when I first was trying to do my first sales training business, and I was like 25, young. I was doing everything great, man. I thought I was, right? I was taking massive action. I already knew about massive action back then. And I was working on all the wrong stuff. But my logo was phenomenal. My brochures were I was going to the printer back and forth. Hey, what are you doing? What's going on, right? But I never made the phone calls. I never picked up the phone. So let's talk about time management and how that ties in to massive action. So, does everyone know the 80-20 rule? Right? You guys have usually heard it this way. The top 20% of a sales organization produces 80% of the results. But did you know the 80-20 rule also applies with all kinds of categories, and one is time management. If you had a list of 10 things on your list, 2 are going to account for 80% of the production. 2. The bottom 8 are only going to account for 20% of the production. So we need to ask ourselves constantly, it's my belief, it's our personal responsibility, right, to ask ourselves, what is the most valuable use of my time? Am I working on what's most important? What was most important back then for me was picking up the phone. Picking up the phone, right? Now, in time management, they say that sometimes things are important, sometimes they're urgent, and oftentimes the things that seem urgent, important. Let you process that for a second. The things that are urgent are usually not important. Because back then, you know what, I'll make that phone call tomorrow. No problem, right? It's the most important thing to do. But I would push it off. Have you ever heard this one in life? They say that people do what is stress relieving instead of goal achieving, right? So that we have to be careful. We have to be, again, taking personal responsibility, right? Be hard on ourselves. Where are we at on that scale to say, you know what? Get yourself back in there. Pick up that phone. That's most important, not clearing out your 50 emails first, right? So we have to ask ourselves, what's the most valuable use of our time and work on what's most important. Across the other side, detail-oriented. This is kind of a blend of not having focus and ADD, linear thinking, pattern recognition, but if you're a victim of the type A personality and there's positives and negatives to that, the negative would be, again, kind of being all over the place, right? Clear your desk, clear your mind, ask yourself what's most important, and really focus on the details. Again, guys, I believe that's a muscle we have to produce. Creative thinking, detail-oriented linear thinking, pattern recognition, right? Would you guys agree you're all in business for yourself? Okay, so don't you owe it to yourself to have the necessary skill sets to achieve at the maximum level? So then would you agree it's your personal responsibility to not only yourself, stay with me here, but to your customer? Huh? Check this out. When you look at your paycheck, that's how many people you've served. Think about that. Then all of a sudden that other statement I said maybe earlier starts to tie in with closing people. Closing people for their own good to help them. The more people you close, the bigger your paycheck. The bigger your paycheck, the more people you've helped. So you're not just letting yourself down in your commission. You're letting your community down. Look, I'll be honest with you guys. I've never spoken in front of a crowd this big. But you know what? I use the power of something called neuro-linguistic programming and state management to put myself in state. You know what I told myself? I said, you know, Jason, check this out for personal responsibility. I said, don't you be selfish and think about one of two things, either your fear and being nervous or thinking about, oh, good job, you broke through your fear. That's being selfish. That's like the level I took it to get in front of you guys, to serve you. I said, no, you are serving these guys. I go, think in your past, Jason. One quote you heard changed your entire life, and I could give examples after examples, but that quote about, without committing to excellence, you're accepting mediocrity, changed my whole life. So, see, I just changed my state. Thank you. So I linked up being nervous to being narcissistic. That's kind of weird. What? NLP can play mind games with yourself to help people, right? Because, it wasn't about me, it's about you. And it was true. I was being authentic, even though it kind of takes a minute to process. State management. All right, back to our boxes. Where are we at? Detail-oriented. Now, we either get our desired result, which is this box down here, or we get our undesired result. You get your desired result, you're done. Or you get your undesired result. So what happens if you don't get the results you want? Here comes that NLP and that conditioning again. If we get our undesired results, we need to embrace failure. Now, what I want to do is give you a logical reason why to embrace failure. Because sometimes the personal improvement, right? It sounds great. Yeah, embrace failure. Yeah. I want to tell you why to embrace failure. First set of tapes that I had on sales said it takes 9 no's to get to 1 yes. We all heard that? Well, I found that to be true in my first sales position. Now, I didn't want to manifest a no. I would close that person for all the good reasons in myself and them. But if I didn't close them, I got excited, literally, not just to feel great and be blissed out, but I got excited because I found it to be true. One more no, and it was almost like clockwork. I'd get one more no, get a yes. So I think we need to embrace failure. And let's talk about determination. Way back in the day, Phil Donahue's show, they had something like 15 millionaires. The details aren't important. 15, 17, I might be off my numbers. They had failed an average of something like 15 times, right? So doesn't that tie into our 1, 2, 3, 4, right? 10 no's to get 1 yes? Think about that. So when you start looking at it that way, it starts making sense. I used to tell my wife years ago, I'd say, you know what? Back when I was really pushing hard and trying to, climb the ladder. I mean, we're all trying to climb the ladder, but I think you know what I mean. But, I used to tell her, I don't care. You know what? You freaking put on my tombstone, here's a guy that failed to become a millionaire, but he swung the bat, and he never stopped swinging. Right? Thank you. So I believe that stuff. I believe we need to condition ourselves because I heard this years ago. I love this. This gives me goosebumps sometimes when I say this, but in the game of baseball, right, 3 strikes, you're out, right? The umpire calls you out. But in the game of life, you're your own umpire, right? You call yourself out. And the law of averages says that if you keep swinging, you will hit a home run, all right? So with all these things we're talking about, guys, and we'll hit the last box in 1 second, most people aren't committed to excellence. Most people aren't going to notch up on the personal responsibility, all these different boxes. Guys, if you commit yourself to follow each one of these boxes, including your own, I want you to make your own success and achievement blueprint. Okay? This is just my version. I want you to make your own. Add boxes, delete boxes. But this is your map. Make your own map. Make this yourself and rate yourself on that scale from 1 to 10 because these, along with the things you add, are what's going to help you to become successful. What I don't want you, when I came through on my intro, is to fall into that trap of where you're reading some book on goals, and maybe again 6 months ago it was on attitude, and you forget this stuff. Let's take responsibility and take notes on the personal improvement we're going through. Obviously take action, but let's place it on our map so we can re-reference it. Final box, change your approach. How long would you give your average baby to walk, right? Mom, no, my baby's going to keep walking. You're going to change your approach. If what you're doing is not working, just change your approach. And that's why that line goes right back to strategy. Goes right back to strategy. You just need to rework your strategy. So what I wanted to do is sprinkle in a little bit of linear thinking into this process because, look, it's all great. We want to feel great, but that's why to feel great because we're serving other people. We're serving ourselves, personal responsibility, and all the things we talked about. So what's going to happen, guys, when you log in Power Sales University, if you do want access to this chart, and I hope you do, I made a special folder for you guys. You're going to look at the bottom when you log in. It's going to say your file vault. Go in the file vault, and it'll be right there, a folder for your success and achievement blueprint. I'll see you guys virtually inside Power Sales University. I implore you to master the art and science of sales and get your degree in the art and science of sales. Thank you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now in a 20-minute intermission.